Shalom and welcome to our three-part series on the Rapture Doctrine. I will be addressing three commonly used arguments that have been used to validate this fairly new doctrine that has come to be only within the last 200 years ago, advocated by John Darby as well as some other notable names. And if this topic or content like this interests you, I invite you to subscribe and turn on your notifications for our next video. Flee or have faith and wait. 2 Peter chapter 2 warns us about false prophets, that being John Darby and all those who teach this doctrine, about damnable heresies that defame the truth and lead the sheep astray, ultimately into damnation. And despite the many verses that tells us plainly to flee Babylon, flee the land of Chaldees, get out of Egypt, how have we come with this entitled mindset that Yah is going to poof us up into the cloud out of harm's way when we have example after example from Abraham, who fled from Ur of Chaldees, from Lot, who fled from Sodom and Gomorrah, down to our exodus out of Egypt. David, he fled from Saul. Even Yehoshua, he fled from the face of Herod. So many of us refuse to see and accept this direct command, whether it be through reprobation, blindness, or even sincere ignorance. And I am coming from a different angle in this video. I'm not going to be using any verses that plainly says to come out of Babylon, but I'm going to be focusing on deliverance. What is this waiting on Yah continuously spoken of, and what is faith? So we will first begin with the word Natzal. It has a few meanings, such as to strip or to plunder, and it has also been used mainly in the Bible as to deliver. And from my personal findings, I have found this word within the Nif'al building approximately 15 times. So let's talk about Nif'al for a second. The Hebrew language has a system of verbs called binyanim. And binyanim it's a verb building, and it's divided up into two categories, both active and passive, as well as four branches. That is consisting of four natures. That would be simple, intensive, causative, and reflexive. And some of these verbs can fall into more than one nature, such as the nifal building. So though its main nature is to be passive, it can also function as both a reflexive and a reciprocal verb. So I have here an example for us. Hatapuach ne'echal al yadei Rachel. The apple was eaten by Rachel. So in this case, in a passive voice, the apple is the one that is receiving the action, meaning that it is the one that is being eaten, in this case, by Rachel. Next, we have reflexive. A reflexive verb is when a subject is acting on itself. So we have here, hu nimchar le'avdut. He has sold himself into slavery. This is when a subject, again, is doing something to his own self. In this case, this person, this man, he is selling himself. He's doing the action to himself. And lastly, we have a reciprocal verb. So a reciprocal verb is when you need two or more parties in order for an action to be completed, in order for it to play out. So we have here, Hem nelchamu kmo ariot. They fought like lions. So in order for fighting to take place, you need at least two parties. No one is fighting themselves. So you may be asking yourself, well, how would I know whether a verb is acting in a passive, active, or reciprocal nature? So obviously it's going to be context. And sometimes some words may only and always fall into a particular nature. And in this case, it simply comes with learning the language. And luckily, there are plenty of resources out there to help you with that. And lastly, in terms of reciprocal verbs, this can be a little easier to detect as it requires, again, two or more parties in order for this action to take place. So I want you to keep this word in the back of your mind as we move forward. The word is Natzal, and it's nifal, reflexive form. This means to deliver yourself. We're coming back to this word in just a minute. So our second focal point is on the word kawa, which has often been translated as the word to wait. But a more fitting term is actually to hope, and it also has some other meanings such as accord or to gather. Now, how do we know that this word is to hope and not so much as to stall and to wait for something. So I'll give you a few examples. I have here in Isaiah chapter 5, the parable of his vineyard. So the parable of this vineyard, it is symbolic of the house of Israel, who has received all the love, the care, and the correction from the husbandman, which is Yehoshua, to remove the stony hearts. And he even gave them a watchtower. That watchtower is a leader. And the leader, they are supposed to guide the people in the way that they should go. And in all that work that was provided for the garden, for the vineyard, there was a hope and an expectation that good fruit would be brought out. So where it says here, when I expected sweet grapes, this is the word he hoped. He didn't just sit there and just hope and wait for the best. He has to put in some sort of effort or work in order for his expectation to be brought out. So we also have the story of Rahab and the spies, Rahab and the spies. So Rahab had requested some sort of sign or a surety from the spies that she would know that the oath between them would be kept. And the phrase that was used in the passage is tikvat chut, a thread of hope. So as long as that thread hung from her window, there was both a hope and an expectation that her life was going to be preserved through that promise. Now, there was, again, something that she had to do in order for that hope and that expectation to be fulfilled. That was, number one, obviously not telling on the spies. And two, she had to make sure that she kept the thread in that window. So there's still a work that has to be put forth in order for a hope or an expectation to come out. It's not just sitting and waiting. Just for a third witness, I'm going to give you a third example. Job chapter 7, verses 1 through 2. It says, "Is not a man forced to labor on earth? And are not his days like the days of a hired man? Like a slave that desires for shade, and a hireling waits for his wages." So the word waits here is also kawa. The hireling hopes for his wages. So in order for the hireling to have a hope or an expectation for his wages, there has to be, number one, an agreement that was made prior to, before he started work with his master. And there's plenty of other verses that proves this point, but I'm trying to keep this video short and straight to the point. We're going to return back to our word Natzal, and it's nif'al, reflexive. Also very important, don't forget the word kawa. I want you to also put that in the back of your mind. We will come back to this towards the end of the video. So let's move forward to Natzal and its nif'al, reflexive. So our first verse starts with Deuteronomy chapter 28. It says, "And Yahweh shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, and thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you." So the word here where it says, "and ye shall be sold," is incorrect. So the word here in the Hebrew is hitmachartem, which comes from the word machar, and that means to sell. And the word hitmachartem, it can be found in the hitpael verb building. So if you look here on the left side of the screen, I have circled hitpael, and in the black, it says reflexive. So verbs that come out of this verb stem are reflexive verbs, meaning that this is something that the subject is doing to itself. So it should say, "and you shall sell yourself unto your enemies." Before you even know the Hebrew, you can see that there is something here that is contradicting for it to say, "you shall be sold," but then at the end it says, "no man shall buy you." It doesn't make any sense. So again, the word hitmachartem means, "and you sold yourselves." And it also is used figuratively, like to surrender or even to relinquish yourself. And in other words, to sell out. We have most certainly become sellouts to Babylon. And he repeats himself again in Isaiah 50 and 52. He says, "Thus says Yahweh, where is the bill of your mother's divorcement, whom I have put away? Or which of my creditors is it to you, whom I have sold you? Behold, for your iniquities you have sold yourselves." So we've just learned that we sold ourselves into slavery, and he's not buying us back like he did in Egypt. But he did leave us with his word, and he's also left us with true leaders. And he also has his own hope and expectation as to what we will do, similar to what we just read in Isaiah chapter 5, the parable of his vineyard. He has put the ball in our court to see what we are going to do, and are we going to be obedient and flee, or are we going to wait on Yah and hope to be poofed up in the air? So let's start off with Micah chapter 4. So be in pain and labor to bring forth, O daughter of Zion, like a woman in birth pangs. For now you shall go forth from the city, and you shall dwell in the field. And to Babylon you shall go. There you shall be delivered, and there Yahweh will redeem you from the hand of your enemies. So again, where it says, there you shall be delivered, that is incorrect. It says in the Hebrew, tinatzli, from the word Natzal, and it's nifal reflexive, and there you shall deliver yourselves. And there Yahweh will redeem you from the hand of your enemies. So perhaps you're thinking, well, didn't it just say that Yahweh is not going to redeem us, but now it's saying he is going to redeem us? No, the verse is not contradicting itself. So I have 2 points to start us off with. Number one, it says, labor to bring forth, O daughter of Zion. There are so many scriptures that speaks of the elect giving birth to a son, which is Yahushua being born inside of us. And Mary, for example, the mother of Yahushua, she was a pure, undefiled, and kept woman, both physically and spiritually. And that is what Yah is calling us to be as well. And it is almost impossible to be that while in Babylon. From the defiled food, the polluted air, the corrupt system, you can't keep your eyes clean from nakedness, from a billboard to the streets. And you might say to yourself that, well, that's everywhere. But not necessarily true, at least to the extremity of it. There is no country on this earth that tops the amount of rape, murder, death, kill, mental illness, sicknesses, diseases, etc. So after he has continuously said how detestable and defiled Babylon is, do you really think that he's going to allow you, while inside of a defiled place like Babylon, bear him in a defiled state that he hates and rapture you up into the heavens? No. And 2, it says in the Hebrew, there you shall deliver yourself. That's pretty clear. He's saying that we ourselves are going to remove ourselves, reflexive, from Babylon, and there Yahweh will redeem you. So we can also see here that there is a reciprocal effect. As we are doing the work and being obedient and doing as he's saying, delivering ourselves, he also in the process is redeeming us. So if we look closely, we can also see that there is a seesaw effect in our redemption process, that as we take a step forward in obedience to Yah and getting out of Babylon, he's right behind us to help us along the way. And you will notice these small but not so small instances of Yah working out moments of redemption through us and others in our lives to help you, help yourself, deliver yourself from Babylon as we are walking out in obedience. And I've heard so many testimonies of Yah showing great miracles in their getting out of Babylon process, whether that be from custody, child support, tax debt, not having enough money to even buy a plane ticket, and more. And please know that this redemption process is so much greater than just leaving Babylon. The greater part is the inner work that we have to do in order to receive salvation, but that is to be spoken of another time. All right, so next we will move on to Proverbs chapter 6. So many don't realize that not only do the book of Proverbs contain wisdom, but it also contains prophecy. And Proverbs chapter 6, it is clearly speaking about oaths and being indebted to your words, but it's also a prophetical scripture. It says, my son, if you be surety for your friend, if thou have stricken hands for a stranger, if you have been trapped by the words of your lips, ensnared by the words of your mouth, then do this, my son, deliver yourself as a gazelle from the hand of the hunter, and as a bird from the hand of a fowler. Go to the ant, thou sluggard, and consider her ways, and be wise, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provides her meat in the summer, and gathers her food in the harvest. How long will you sleep, O sluggard? And when will you arise out of your sleep? So let's go back and start at verse 1. My son, if you be surety for your neighbor. In other words, if you have made an oath with your friend and have stricken hands for a stranger. So the word for a stranger is zav, and it also means to become a stranger or to turn aside to something. It has also been used several times in the Bible as a strange woman and also as an adulteress. So what is this vow that we have made that has caused us to become estranged as well as an adulterer? So let's read Jeremiah chapter 44. It says, "As for the word that you have spoken to us in the name of Yahweh, we will not listen to you, but we will do everything that we have vowed. Make offerings to the Queen of Heaven and pour out drink offerings to her, as we did, both we and our fathers, our kings and our officials, in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem. For then we had plenty of food and prospered and saw no disaster. But from the time we stopped burning incense to the Queen of Heaven and pouring out drink offerings to her, we have lacked everything and have been perishing by sword and famine." Jeremiah said to all the people and all the women, "Hear the word of Yahweh, all you of Judah, who are in the land of Egypt. Thus says Yahweh of hosts, the Elohim of Israel, saying, As for you and your wives, you have spoken with your mouths and fulfilled it, with your hands saying, We will certainly perform our vows that we have vowed, to burn incense to the Queen of Heaven and pour out drink offerings to her. Go ahead and establish your vows and certainly perform your vows. Therefore, hear the word of Yahweh, all you of Judah who dwell in the land of Egypt. I am watching over them for harm and not for good. And every man of Judah who is in the land of Egypt will meet his end by the sword or famine until they are finished off." We've read that our forefathers in Egypt vowed themselves to the Queen of Heaven. And a vow is not just making an oath, but it's also dedicating yourself to either someone or something. And our fathers dedicated and made an oath to the Queen of Heaven for food, for prosperity, and for the pride of life. And we have essentially done the same thing, sold ourselves. And we also vowed to Babylon the whore for covetousness. All those who choose to stay and continue to fulfill this vow is most certainly going to see Yah's wrath. And those who choose to be obedient and break free from it, they must deliver themselves and flee like the gazelle, flee, not be raptured up from the hand of the hunter. So who is the hunter? Jeremiah 16 says, "As Yahweh lives, who brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north, and from all the land where he had driven them. For I will bring them back into their lands which I gave to their fathers. And behold, I will send many fishermen, says Yahweh, and they will fish them. And afterward I will send for many hunters, and they will hunt them from every mountain and every hill and out of the holes of the rocks." The hunters are those who are coming to slaughter the remnant of Judah. Those who choose not to break free from this vow with Babylon the whore and refuse to come out, they will be killed. And briefly, the rest of this passage in Proverbs, the ant and the sluggard is about preparing our souls for salvation. So the harvest, it is symbolic for the time of Shavuot. And this should be the time that Yehoshua is being born inside of us. The ant preparing his food has nothing to do with stocking up on physical food for the time of trouble. So your canned beans and pumpkin seeds and rifles are not going to save you from Yah's wrath. Now, how long are we going to be sluggards and drag our feet to do the inner spiritual work that needs to be done to obtain salvation? And a portion of this starts with leaving from Babylon and repenting from this wicked oath that we have made. And again, whoever chooses to stay in Babylon will die by the sword, by famine, be raped, or who knows what else but Yah. Rapture or refugee. So our next word is the word palit, which means both refugee and fugitive. Refugees are people who have fled war, violence, conflict, or persecution, and have crossed an international border to find safety in another country. A fugitive, a person who has escaped from captivity or is in hiding. So in various Bible versions, you will see this term used interchangeably, but the Hebrew, it is the same. The word here in Jeremiah 44, escape, is the word palit, which means either a refugee or a fugitive. Let's read Jeremiah 44. It says, "For I will punish those who dwell in the land of Egypt, as I have punished Jerusalem by the sword, by famine, and by pestilence, so that none of the remnant of Judah who have gone into the land of Egypt to dwell there," we weren't supposed to stay there, "shall escape or survive. except they return to the land of Egypt, which they desire to return and dwell. For none shall return, except those who escape. Who've been raptured? No, those who are fugitives. In being a refugee, there is also a reflexive action taking place. You are, in other words, delivering yourself. No one else is taking you to run away from harm's way. Tikwa wa emunah, hope and faith. In whom and what is our hope that we should wait for? What is the faith that is needed to acquire this hope? Yahweh has left numerous examples of what our faith should look like. Hebrews tells us that because of Abraham's faith, he was counted righteous. This faith, emunah, is not only to believe, but the word emunah is also to practice and to train. We see clearly all of Abraham's trials and mistakes, but he later proved through his continual obedience that led to perfection the faith and the trust that he had in Yah. And it started with leaving Babylon. Our forefathers died not yet receiving the promise, the oath that was sworn to them. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the evidence of things unseen. Remember, hope is proven through an action. Hope and faith intertwines based off of a surety that was agreed upon. But to Yah, oaths are always conditional, and we prove through our faith in Yah. When walking in obedience, we will receive our hoped for and expected promise. What is the promise that was given to Abraham's seed? Was it the land of Canaan? Yes and no. All the way from the beginning, Jacob on his deathbed said, Kiviti le Yahweh, I have waited for Yahweh. I have waited for your salvation, O Yahweh. David says the same. I hope for Yahweh. My whole being hopes, and in his word I put my hope. So according to the book of John, who is the Word? The Word is Yehoshua, our salvation. Our hope is our salvation. Our forefathers confessed that this earth is not our home, and they desired a new homeland, as we read earlier in Jeremiah chapter 44, that those of us in Babylon should desire the place that was promised to us. But be honest, if you've known about coming out of Babylon for over 2 years now, and you haven't made any steps towards getting out, you're still not ready to let go of the oath you made to that whore. The train is leaving soon. Come out of Babylon or wait on Yah's wrath. Stay tuned for part 2. Shalom.